somehow the Lord gave me a second chance at that moment, I would do it all over again.
I start this video with a quote that perfectly echoes my feelings on The Last of Us Part 2. For context, The Last of Us is my favorite video game of all time. So when a sequel was first announced back in 2016, I was somewhat excited. I looked forward to reuniting with characters I had fallen in love with. However, I was also feeling very nervous. I thought the first game ended perfectly, leaving the players on an ambiguous cliffhanger. Many debates centered on whether Joel doomed humanity for selfish reasons, or would sacrificing Ellie deliver the cure. Discussions lasted for years until it all came to a streaking halt. By the time The Last of Us Part 2 was released in June 2020, a division grew within the fanbase. Leaks unfortunately broke the internet like wildfire, resulting in outrageous responses towards anyone involved in the game's production. When I completed my first playthrough of The Last of Us Part 2, I was left feeling confused. I felt like I was on an emotional roller coaster. For one, I loved the beautiful art designs, the incredible soundtrack, and the detailed character expressions. It was a remarkable achievement for the developers at Naughty Dog. However, the story presentation and the balance of gameplay were the flaws that affected my overall experience. I must admit, the criticisms of The Last of Us Part 2 upon release shaped my initial feelings on the game. At first impression, I did not love The Last of Us Part 2 as much as the first game. Once the hype died down a year later, I played it a second time. I took into account the finer details between cutscenes and gameplay moments and liked it a little bit more. Now with the announcement of a remastered version years later, there were again many opinions. For me, I was willing to give the game another chance. On top of that, I was curious about what additions and changes were made to see whether this may affect my gameplay experience this time around. This is my review and perspective on The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. Warning, this video contains spoilers. Creator Neil Druckmann responded in a 2017 interview, "If the first one is about love, then the second one is about hate. I interpret The Last of Us Part 2's themes carried over from the first and elevated them to an extreme. How far would you go to protect the ones you love? How far would you go to avenge your loved ones? In this post-apocalyptic world where trust and survival can either go hand in hand or bite you back, no one is safe in the world of The Last of Us, particularly Part 2. Many emotional scenes left me speechless. Without a doubt, the death of Joel impacted me on a personal level. The Last of Us Part 2 is about revenge, but it is also about love and survival. The developers at Naughty Dog must be applauded for delivering realistic, grounded characters, showcasing the power of human nature in the most unfortunate circumstances. But a narrative risk was taken. In just over 30 hours, I concluded that the story had overstayed its welcome. The non-linear approach was jarring as a player, although it was ambitious to explore the impact of the cordyceps on a wider scale. Finishing Remastered still left me feeling conflicted about whether I should love or hate this wider cast of characters. Everyone is doing what they can to survive. The most notable new character was Abby. She had become the most divisive character in the series. During my first playthrough, introduced by murdering Joel, she is portrayed as the villain. Hated by Ellie through her eyes, the player sets out on a vengeful journey. In Ellie's shoes, players are already emotionally attached, eliminating all obstacles, that being Abby's companions. Her psychological downfall is also explored, with the addition of heartwarming and heartbreaking flashback sequences. However, that all drastically pause at the midpoint, when Ellie finally crosses paths with Abby. While Abby had a very important story to tell, there was an unbalanced atmosphere playing the second half of the game from her point of view. Playing the game again on Remastered, it still felt the same. I greatly noticed the shift in the pacing of storytelling. It was challenging for both the player and the viewer to adapt to Abby's character arc. While I enjoyed Abby's character during gameplay, which I will touch on later, the Remastered reminded me of characters I had forgotten, Mel and Owen in particular. Their love triangle involving Abby seemed to be the only purpose they served in her story arc. While Owen had more screen time and the insight into his psychological warfare was intriguing, in the end only contributed to Abby's character growth. Yara and Lev were my favorite new characters, and I wish more time was spent with them. During Abby's storyline, they cooperate with Abby, building a complicated dynamic between the two opposing parties. Additionally, they provided glimpses of the Seraphites and how their established society adapted to the effects of the cordyceps. This imbalance of characters and storytelling would have been fixed by removing some characters and expanding on a few. Another favorite new character was Dina. During Ellie's playthrough, she is her partner. Their relationship was fully realized early game. Enough time was spent as a player to understand how the two of them work together. When Jesse was added, I could not help but parallel similar dynamics with Abby, Owen, and Mel. However, Jesse was another character I grew to like too. He eventually becomes another ally on Ellie's journey, and the players bear witness to the friendship they shared during these difficult times. It was cool for Naughty Dog to have their second game explore other factions, including the Seraphites, Jackson, and the Washington Liberation Front. Another faction was also shown later during what I felt was a bloated and rushed third act of the game. While it delivered some difficult combat scenarios, the recurrent gameplay by that point made this section look unnecessary. It was just another obstacle for Ellie to overcome toward her main objective. I feel The Last of Us Part 2 was a longer game than the first. I believe it is because a simple story told was stretched out with too many characters, overshadowing good but repetitive gameplay components. In The Last of Us Part 2, players primarily control Ellie. Like Joel in the first game, players can use firearms, throw bricks or bottles, jump or climb to traverse areas for navigation and combat purposes, and upgrade skills through training manuals. One difference is the stealth mechanic. Ellie can crawl in a prone position to not only evade enemies, but to sneakily approach for quieter, deadly kills. An important decision to decipher is to go stealth or guns blazing. I prefer stealth, but during Remastered, I did a combination of both. In some cases, that would be necessary. Attacking enemies directly does create a lot of tension, excitement, and surprising reactions from AI. Human characters shout aloud names when one of theirs has fallen. At first, there was an uneasy feeling about brutally killing someone caught in the middle of a terrible conflict. However, it became tedious the more times it happened. As mentioned earlier, Abby becomes a playable character in the second half of the game. The mechanics resemble Ellie's, except with more firepower, heavier combat, and mildly different weapons. However, storytelling conflicted with my gameplay experience. Returning to Remastered, there was still a disconnection in warming up to the character. I believe the non-linear storytelling played a massive part in this. As Abby, she interacts with human characters Ellie had brutally murdered earlier in the game. Whether it was intentional or not, the game made me want to feel guilty for killing them. While it was interesting to watch how the narrative dots connected, refilling my stats made me want to rush through to reach key story moments. Scavenging and resourcing are vital when outlasting in this game. Depending on player difficulty, resources can be scarce, including health kits, bullets, and even other weapons. To get this video's game footage, I have played the game on very light difficulty. There are more resources, auto-aim is available, and enemies die quickly. But I will challenge myself to play on grounded difficulty. There is minimal resource availability, combat is hard-hitting, and quicker deaths occur. Death is inevitable in The Last of Us. Sometimes it can take one bite from an infected, a gunshot from a human, or just simply falling off a ledge. Thankfully, remastered reloads are a quicker rate following deaths. Unless you decide to challenge yourself with the permadeath mode, where you die once, literally game over. This makes for another important decision. Use scissors to create additional arrows, or combine them for a melee weapon upgrade. Saving resources as long as possible can be beneficial when encountering tougher enemies, which may require more than just a powerful shotgun. The listening mode is useful in combat. This can give players a heightened sense of hearing and spatial awareness of nearby enemies. Headphones may come in handy. Higher difficulties do not include listen mode. It encourages the player to completely listen. Sometimes, the sound of a clicker means they are closer than you think. I have found this mode useful during my first playthrough. The sound design stands apart as one of the best elements of The Last of Us Part 2. I highly encourage playing the game with headphones. It makes for a completely interactive gameplay experience. It puts players into a world where relying on their senses does help them survive. I did not notice this feature the first time I played, so on Remastered, I looked at other settings on how to play the game in whatever way I see fit. Apart from selecting a difficulty level, adjustments can be made, such as navigation. At the click of a button, players can be assisted when maneuvering. The Last of Us Part 2 has larger spaces to explore compared to the first game. While every environment was beautifully designed and captivating to explore, it can be overwhelming and easy to get lost. Flexible changes in settings can make any player's gameplay experience smoother. The remastered version offered additional outfits, in which players can alter the look of their playable character. Many of them can be unlocked during game progression. These changes do not make any difference in gameplay. However, having Ellie walk around in a spacesuit does lighten the mood with a bit of humor. The developers at Naughty Dog are highly praised for their immaculate work on the art and design of their games. The Last of Us Part 2 was no exception. Every environment felt like a chapter in a story, and every room explored had a story to tell. Finding items, including handwritten letters, delivered the heartbreak of the lives once lived and lost. Exploring is an essential part of experiencing The Last of Us Part 2. Every fine detail can be seen, such as foliage and light through the trees. Weather changes illustrate the mood and atmosphere in the game progression. There had been moments where I would pause and take in the views. It is truly remarkable the amount of work Naughty Dog has put into creating every stage in the world of The Last of Us. While it was incredible to explore the bigger world that was in The Last of Us Part 2, I realized that there was a lot of back and forth. Compared to the first game, where the central journey was progressing from one new area to another, retreating to a central base was the primary setting. Seattle was a key location in The Last of Us Part 2, and even though its setting was vital to the game's story, there still felt an unbalanced range of different locations. I wished more time was spent exploring other locations, including the Seraphite hideout, and even the Radless faction, despite their late inclusion during the game's third act. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered offered new content, including lost levels. These were early development levels not seen in the original release. Remastered was an opportunity to re-experience The Last of Us Part 2 in another way. These lost levels can be accessed through the main menu, which I recommend checking out after completing the main story. Developer commentary provided insight into why these levels were not featured in the game's initial release. I am thankful that this extra content is available and gave me more Last of Us content than I needed. More studios should look at this as an opportunity for gamers to gain an understanding of game development. I must mention the roguelike survival mode exclusively available in Remastered. For background context, Naughty Dog recently announced the cancellation of their Last of Us online game. An online competitive mode was included in the PlayStation 3's original release of The Last of Us back in 2013. It was fun, met with high praise, and desired more by fans. Unfortunately, that was not the case when it came to the sequel. In my opinion, No Return seems to play out just like that, just not online. Playing as multiple characters in an Outlast survival combat mode, I am happy to report that No Return was thrilling and fun. It might not be the online component many fans wanted, but as someone who does not play many online games, this gave me more content to play and be characters I never imagined myself to be. The guitar is a key device seen throughout The Last of Us. It is a part of Joel's character and something that brings him and Ellie closer together. The guitar gameplay was a surprising feature in The Last of Us Part 2. When I played the game for the first time, I was blown away at times players can freely play a song by hitting the right notes. One of my favorite scenes that can be easily missed was Ellie's rendition of Take On Me. I'll be coming for you, okay? Take on me. Take Remastered now allows players to play songs freely. You can change the look of the guitar, character avatar, and background setting, which I think is a neat little feature. I must give a shout out to Photo Mode. As a casual photographer, I was excited to experiment with this feature. Even though this is not a new feature, on Remastered, I embraced my third opportunity to play this game to expand my creative horizons. It can be easily set up by clicking 2 buttons simultaneously to snap any action and adjust settings to your liking. I would like to take this moment to share some screenshots I am proud of and show off the gorgeous details this mode can reveal. Naughty Dog is praised as one of the best in the games industry regarding their technical innovations in gaming and storytelling with The Last of Us. The remastered version takes full advantage of the PlayStation 5. There is increased texture resolution and improved shadow quality, elevating The Last of Us Part 2's gorgeous visuals. This might not seem like a massive difference for most viewers. However, I noticed during cutscenes, the facial details on characters shockingly looked realistic. Accessibility features such as descriptive audio and speech to vibrations make the game adaptable for any skill level. The wireless controllers features are also taken advantage of. I noticed the adaptive triggers make smoother movement, quicker weapon switching, and haptic feedback, like riding on a horse. I cannot discuss technical achievement without mentioning the soundtrack. Gustavo Santellalo returned to compose the game's score. Once again, he delivered the most intense and emotionally powerful game score I had ever heard. The achievement in sound design complements the grueling designs of the infected. Explosion sounds effectively impacted the reactions of AI, making combat and escaping enemies all the more an intense one. Remastered has enhanced the mix of sound and score to full effect. Everyone has an opinion about the existence of this remaster. On average, one playthrough of a video game is enough. I wanted to replay The Last of Us Part 2 to get a definitive answer on how I feel about it. My third time playing this game was a little more enjoyable than the last. There was so much about the game that I loved, but I also noticed things I did not like. There were moments I had forgotten, which caught me by surprise. Despite how emotionally exhausting the oversaturated gameplay was, I was still in awe of the updated graphics and additional content. I took my time taking advantage of all these new features. Watching behind-the-scenes footage was a highlight. I cannot even imagine the challenges and struggles Naughty Dog had to go through. I commend everyone on the team for taking bold risk in the sequel of one of the most beloved games. I am grateful to have had the opportunity to play The Last of Us Part 2 again. Remastered did not add anything groundbreaking, nor did it change how I feel about The Last of Us Part 2. The themes carried the story instead of the characters, and there was more gameplay, thus in effect stretching the story for too long. While it still has left me with more questions than answers, perhaps that is a good thing. Following the cliffhanger on The Last of Us Part 1, Part 2 created discussions and debates more than ever. Again, everyone will have their opinion on this game, and that is okay. The most rewarding thing Naughty Dog has created is a must-play experience for all gamers. I walked away from Remastered thinking, how will HBO adapt this debated chapter into a live-action episodic format? That I am looking forward to. So is this game worth the buy? If you had already played Part 1, then this is a must purchase. On the PlayStation 5, it is the penultimate way to fully experience this immersive game in its upgraded software capacity. If you have previously owned a PlayStation 4 version, it can be upgraded digitally for a small price. I have purchased a physical copy for my collection. I like seeing the new artwork beside my Part 1 physical copy. Thank you for watching my video on The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. If you played the game, how do you feel about The Last of Us Part 2? Please share your thoughts below. This is Pearl signing out. Endure and survive.